Hello all, Jamie Rodgers here from Jamie Rodgers Crafts, and today we are launching our very first bundle offer, which you will be able to track down at a few of our stockists. More about that later. Our bundle today is saving you 20% off of recommended retail price, and it features 5 incredible 8x8 stencils. Now I'm going to share with you lots of samples of these in just a moment to give you a little bit of inspiration, but let's just have a quick look through the designs. Our first one we're looking at here is our floating bubbles design. Then we have got for you the directions design. Now this one's great for layering in multiple directions, making up some really fun backgrounds. We've then got for you this pinstripe. This is my favourite. I love this stencil. It's such an elegant and simplistic style and so easy to ink it, texture paste it, emboss it. Just incredible. Then we've got for you the large trellis. This one always reminds me a bit of like Christmas windows, and I want to put little bits of snow in the corners, but of course lots we can do with this one, lots of occasions too. And then we have got our octagon trellis as well. So these are your 5 stencils that are going to come in your bundle. They're all as what we class as our 8x8 stencils, and that means that we've got a much larger room to play with than traditional stencils, and great for making our sort of scrapbook pages, our home decor, and of course our cards. Now here at Jamie Rodgers Crafts, we genuinely believe that giving you small little stencils that you've got to try and match up is nothing but a faff. So we would prefer to give you large format stencils that you can of course trim down. You know, if you want to be making A6 cards or smaller, 5x5, 3x3, 2x2, whatever it is you want to be doing, then of course you can trim them down, but you don't have to try and match them up. And to me, that's a real game changer. What you might not know about our stencils as well is these are all cut from a slightly thicker mylar to what many companies use. And that's quite important because it means when we use our texture paste through them, we're going to have more depth. So when our texture paste dries, especially like our gemstones texture paste, it looks more like we've stuck embellishments on our card than just a fine layer of a glaze or a texture paste. It also means, and this is really important to me, when we emboss our stencils for our machines, which I don't know if you know you can do this, but if you've got a rubber mat or a tan mat, you're going to need an A4 machine with these ones, but you're going to take your stencil, you're going to put your card on top of it, you're going to put your rubber mat on top of that, you're going to send it through your machine. You'll have to check on the rest of your sandwich depending on the machine you're using, but when you do that, what's going to happen is that the rubber mat or the tan mat will push down on the card into the apertures of the stencil, and when it comes out the other side, it's going to be embossed for you. So this is similar to sort of original embossing folders. Before we went on to the big 3D ones, we used to do what we now sort of class as 2D embossing folders, and it's more that style of depth, not quite as prominent as that, but certainly a good depth for you to be able to work onto, ink on top of, and colour and sort of decorate with as well. And you're going to get to see that on some of my samples I'm going to be sharing with you shortly. Now the recommended retail price for this bundle is $29.95. Our 8x8 stencils are incredible value. They're only $5.99 as a recommended retail price, which again is a really great price point for such a large quality stencil. But this is all about a bundle, and it's a limited time offer and a limited time bundle. But at the moment, you're going to be able to get hold of this at select stockists for just £23.96. So that's kind of like buying 4 and getting 1 free, which is a great way to look at it, but it's actually a 20% saving. So either way, great saving. Great selection of designs that, like you're going to see throughout my samples, can be used for just about any occasion, any theme, any colour scheme throughout the whole year. Now, as I mentioned, this is a limited time bundle, and that basically means that it's available from our stockists till September the 14th. That's Saturday, September the 14th. So you've got roughly 2 weeks to get hold of this before they're going to go back up to the recommended retail price of $5.99. So if you do like the look of this one, don't dilly-dally. Now, I keep mentioning our stockists. If you haven't already found our stockists, pop onto our website. It's www.jamierodgerscrafts.com, and then you'll find a little tab that says stockists. If you give that a click, it will open up and you will find our ever-expanding lists of stockists. We try to work with them as best we can, and of course, like today, offer bundles and bits that they can take advantage of to bring you the best savings that we can possibly offer on incredible quality items. So let's jump in and have a little look at some inspiration to see what you could be creating with these, because I have a feeling you're going to fall in love with them. Let's start off by looking at our floating bubble design. Now this one's such a fun, cool design because it can be taken into so many different realms. And a bit like all of these really, you're gonna get bored of me saying this, but I think there's such a general set of stencils that you could be dressing these up for Christmas. They could be Easter, they could be Valentine's Day, they could be just about anything you want them to be all throughout the year, depending on the colour. I keep seeing like scrapbook pages of bath time and bits like that and turning these into little blowing bubbles, or maybe you want to decorate them up as baubles for a Christmas background, or confetti for a wedding. You know, there's so many different reasons that you're going to want to come through these with your inks and your texture paste to create different styles. Now I've just done a few really quick simple cards with these to give you a little bit of inspiration. This one's using our seashell blue from our Elite Misters, and I've just placed the stencil down, misted over the top, and then taken it away. And I love that where I've used it with the misters, you can see that sort of edge, that sort of decal edge style to where the mister has gone into the polar white cardstock. Now as I said, I've kept this one very plain and simple. I've layered in some of our Elite cardstock, so we're working on the polar white, we've got the seashell blue, the night sky navy, and the sail away blue in the background. Just finished off with our happy birthday sentiment, but again this could have been decorated with so many different elements in that middle point. It certainly doesn't just have to be a birthday card. Then we move on to our lovely Christmas version here. So this time what I've done is I've taken our lovely ruby red gemstones texture paste, and instead of applying the texture paste directly over the stencil for this one, what I actually did is and you're going to see this card appear shortly, but I took the stencil, I've placed it down, I've put the gemstones texture paste over the top as you normally would, and then removed the stencil. That's actually on a white background that's coming up on a project shortly. And then instead of cleaning off the stencil, the sort of leftover piece that's on here of the texture paste, I've taken a blending brush and I've just blended it over the top, and it's taken it into the circles, and you're going to see that you've got that lovely glossy clear shimmer from the clear medium that holds the glitter in place, and the glitter's then built up around the edge of the circles. So again, it looks a little bit like we're blowing bubbles, and we've got that sort of transparent shimmer to the middle of the circles. I really liked that and thought it was a slightly different idea that I'd not seen done before. But of course you could be doing that with all different texture pastes. You could have inked first with an ink pad and then done that over the top, so you'd got colours going on underneath there as well. Lots of ways you could dress this up. For this one, I've just gone for one of our sentiment stamps from the Christmas Wishes collection. I've added on the classic poinsettia and our lovely Christmas foliage, and just finished that off with a bow, matching in the ruby red from the gemstones with our romantic red in our cardstock. And of course, our heritage green has been brought in for the foliage. Then showing you a slightly different idea, and I love this with stencils because I feel we can go off on so many different tangents, and we can use them with so many of our different items. You know, we can bring in our die cuts if we want to, we can bring in our inks, we can bring in our misters, we can bring in our stamps. And for this card, I've done a little bit of lots of things really. So this is using our sunbeam yellow from the Elite Misters, which of course matches our cardstock, the Elite cardstock. This time I've taken the stencil, I've laid it down, I've misted over the top of it, and then I've just taken one of our Floral lace stamps and stamped it randomly using the Black Panther ink pad to just bring that in and sort of break up those bubbles. Again, you could be doing this with a whole host of different items. You could also find some stamps that fit within the bubbles and stamp them over the top instead. And then I've just added in one of our elegant butterflies to the middle to finish that one off. But I feel just with these three samples, you know, you've got Christmas, you've got these sort of bright yellows, sort of bumblebee colours, you've got the blues, three very different styles all from one stencil. And that's what, as I said, I really love about stenciling. Then we're going to have a little look at the direction stencil. So this one, as I mentioned, really good fun. I love using it going down with the arrows sort of pointing down and then flipping it and putting it going up. And whether you do that one in ink, one in texture paste, or two shades of ink, or however you wish, that works really nicely. Another great way to use this is to do one product through it and then simply drop shadow it. So just bring it down so that that arrow is in the next position down, and colour it with a different item. You can of course build it round as well if you want to, depending on the colours and mediums you're working with. So it's kind of a layering stencil, but of course you can just use it as you see it if you want to. This one also reminds me a lot of tire tracks. So maybe you're sort of looking for things for your masculine cards and you want to build up on that sort of theme. I think this one's going to work quite nicely for that too. Now, just to give you a few ideas, this time I've used our Argentite Gemstones glitter texture paste, so that's the silver shade, and I've used it over our Rose Petal Pink Elite cardstock. And I've done the whole background, and then I've just trimmed out a little line from it that I've then added as a belly band running through the middle. I've added in the With Love, and then I've brought in the Forget Me Not flowers and some of our Gracious Leaves die cuts to finish it off. Again, very quick, very simple, very easy, but you've got that beautiful sparkle and shimmer going through from the mirror card, and of course our Gemstones texture paste that really makes that pop. Showing you a very different style, but sticking to similar colours. So we've got our lovely greys and pinks coming through. Now this was something I'd never done and didn't actually think was possible. I took the stencil and I embossed it. So I run it through my die cutting machine with a rubber mat like we discussed earlier. And then I took my Piggy Pink quick dry ink pad and I rubbed that over the top to colour the arrows. And that worked really nicely, but I ended up with a little bit of colour transferring into the background of it. And I weren't overly happy with it. So I decided what I was going to do is I was going to take the Elephant Grey ink pad and go over the top of the whole of the item. So I expected I would colour the triangles, I would colour the background, and I would then be able to take that and decorate up from there instead. What actually happened to my amazement, and something I didn't predict, was that the Piggy Pink ink, kind of reacted and refused to take on the Elephant Grey from the pigment ink. And I could just brush it off with a cloth and reveal that pink coming through from underneath. It's not a technique, it's kind of a resist technique really, that I didn't know I could achieve with the quick dry pigment ink pads. This was my first version of this, I only just discovered this. So I think I'm going to play around with that and see if I can make that work with the other colours as well. I can't guarantee it will. This is a new idea, but it's something I want to experiment with. So something you too can also play along with. I've added on our lovely lace balloon and I've painted this in using the Rose Petal Pink from the Elite Misters, so we're just matching our pinks as we go through our project. I've stamped this one with the same black, actually I think it's Black Panther I stamped that in, to be honest, and then I've added on the flowers from the Forget Me Nots. I've stamped the Happy Birthday in the Piggy Pink to match in, and I've stamped the banner and cut that out as well. So again, although sort of pinks and greys and silvers, two very different styles. Then we move on to Rodney. I know you have all fallen in love with Rodney. Rodney has been our most popular stamp ever at Jamie Rodgers Crafts, and so many of you have been snapping Rodney up. Now of course I've gone in here with Rodney and added him on, but it is all about the background. So for the background this time, I've taken the stencil, I've put it on with the arrows facing upwards, and I've inked with a blending brush over the top using the blue Emperor quick dry ink pad. I've then taken the stencil and I've twisted it round, and I've gone over the top with the Argentite Gemstones. I can never get that out in one go. Argentite Gemstones glitter texture paste. It's quite a mouthful, isn't it? So I've gone over with that and then let that dry, and it's made this lovely sort of X mark going through the background, which I really like. And we've got that beautiful shimmer and sparkle going on between the silver mirror card and of course our Argentite texture paste. So it just works nicely, doesn't it? So again, three very different styles, all achieved just using the directions stencil. Then we move on to our next one. So this time we're going to look at the large trellis stencil. Now I think there are just so many ways I want to take this one. I can see me using this over background papers and inking over them to turn them into like little patchwork grids and bits like that. It's kind of like the inches technique. These aren't inch squares obviously because it's only 8 inches and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, so it's not far off of an inch, is it? I hadn't counted them before, but they're going to be about 3/4 of an inch, I would guess, by memory. But it certainly could give you that style of background that you could build up in that inchy style. This one's also really easy to trim down, and again I think we forget that sometimes when we look at stencils. We look at them and think we've got to use them in the size they are, but of course this one great for stripping into little striplets, great for doing your DL cards, good for doing your sort of 5x5s, your 6x6s, your 8x8s. So it's one of those that you're going to take into many different size cards. Now with that in mind, I'm going to bring this one in to begin with. So as you can see, I've trimmed this one down. I think I've got 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 squares on this one. So again, a great idea to show you how you can trim that down slightly. Now with this card, I took the stencil, I've run it through the machine on a piece of polar white card to emboss it. So we've got that lovely like panelled background style going on. I've then taken the Squirrel Red from the quick dry pigment pads, and I literally took the pad directly and rubbed it over the cardstock just to get this lovely sort of shaded red going on. Now I could have been more intense with my application and coloured the whole of the card red, but to be honest, if I was going to do that, I might as well have just started with a piece of Romantic Red Elite cardstock. This was more about getting that texture and that shading coming through between the white and the red, which is what I was aiming for. Once I'd made my panel, I've stamped our lovely Father Christmas. He comes in the A Gift of Christmas, I believe, is the stamp set. And I've coloured him in, and I've added a little Seasons Greetings banner on and a little ribbon in the corner just to give that present vibe and to match in with our presents that Father Christmas is holding on to. Now the next one I think you might find slightly more trickier to see on screen, but it's actually really lovely. So I've taken our Floral spray stencil, I've put it down onto a piece of our Night Sky Navy cardstock, and I've used some white ink to go over the top and colour it. And I've always loved this stencil, I genuinely have. I think it's a really pretty one, I'm really happy with it, I love it. But when I've come to use it, I struggle a bit with these areas. There's too much space, but not enough space. I don't know what I'm going to add up here or add down here to infill those areas, but I love this bit. The design matches perfectly with our dies and our forget-me-not flower dies and our butterflies are the same styles. So we could layer those on somewhere if we want to, but I find that a bit heavy and it detracts from this lovely diagonal floral spray. But this stencil, our lovely large trellis, to me fills that void. So what I've done is I've taken it and I've embossed it. So again, sending it through the machine with my rubber mat so that it's added in this panelled effect. And I know panelling in home decor is all the rage. And I felt this filled the void in these areas. And I don't know how well you're going to see this on screen, so I apologise. But that bit of texture, that breakup of that open space really fills that void and this void without having to add any more in there. And yet leaves this part to really sing and dance and sort of be the focal point of the project. But it just means this area isn't plain and boring. Now I mention this because there are so many stencils, stamps, die cuts that you could be adding into this area and using this in the same way. And it just shows you a different purpose for embossing this one from obviously our Father Christmas card right the way through to our floral one. Then to give you a different idea, because obviously on both of these I've embossed them, and although they're stencils and it's great we can emboss them, of course we can do so much more with them. So this card instead, I've gone for a very Frozen-esque style Father Christmas, but it's all about the background. I've taken the stencil, I've laid it down onto a piece of polar white cardstock, and I've used our Night Sky Navy Elite Mister and misted over the top. I've let that sit for a while and then moved away the stencil. Because I'm working with our Elite Misters, I don't have to worry that they're going to dry on the stencil. They're water-based, they'll wash off. So I left it for a little while. And what that's created is a bit like the stencil I showed you earlier. It gives you like a patchy decal edge to each of your squares. And I really like that because it gives them more of a fabric style and it's less regimental to when we're embossing it and we're getting them crisp lines. I then chose to add my frame into the middle, my panel into the middle, but I've left it so it's slightly smaller than their middle squares, just so you see that that pattern runs all the way around and you get that idea. But of course we could stagger these down. We could have cut those out of the middle, layered them back on the top and added more to them. I've then brought in our lovely poinsettia stamp. I love this stamp. I also really like the corner element that comes with it. And I've added in them sort of shades of blue to match in with my Father Christmas stamp that's going on in the background. But again, 3 very different cards, all created with that lovely large trellis stencil. Then moving on to our penultimate design, let's have a little look at the Octagon Trellis Stencil. Now this one's a great one, and I also think that this has a bit of a steampunky vibe to it, slightly mechanical, so it could easily go in back to your sort of cars and masculine vibes if you wanted it to. It's also quite fun for your B cards because it's got that sort of background of them sort of hexagons or octagons that of course works brilliantly when we sort of go to that honeycomb styling. But it doesn't have to be those that we go for. So let's bring in a couple of cards to share with you. So this time again, let's see if I can get it out in one go. I have used the Argentite Gemstones Glitter Texture Paste. See, if I slow down and think about it, I can do it. But I've used the texture paste through the stencil to create this lovely like disco ball effect in the background. I've matted and layered with polar white cardstock and silver mirror card, and then I've brought them same shades up into this top layer, but also adding in the seashell blue from the Elite card, just to match in with our lovely Rodney. So of course on Rodney I've coloured him in lots of shades of blues and silvers, and I wanted to coordinate them through the background. again, and I know I'm a broken record, but this could have been any sort of finishing touch that would have worked nicely with this silver background. This could be for just about any occasion. If it wasn't Rodney and Let It Snow we'd popped on the top. Then moving on, let's have a little look at this one. So I know you've all fallen in love with this as well. Our stamps have proved so popular. And this one, our Poinsettia Melody, this is one of our pattern match stamps. If you haven't seen them already, that means that you can literally stamp it, move it across and stamp it again, and move it and stamp it, and move it and stamp it. And you can do that in any direction. You can go sideways like I did, you can go out this way, you can go up, you can go down. Basically, the edges of the stamp match perfectly with the next set. So you don't have to buy multiple stamps. It's all in one DL stamp, but that leaf will carry on. So when this stamp butts into it, that leaf will carry on over the edge. And that works all the way around it. So you could literally stamp your own wrapping paper if you want to, your own scrapbook pages, anything you want to stamp. It's down to the limitations of your stamp press or your stamp block, and of course the size of the card or paper you're working with. But for this one, I've stamped this down, I've coloured it in with Alcar markers, and then I've popped this stencil on the top and sent it through to emboss it, so that we've got the embossing running over or through the stamped and coloured area, but it's also going, of course, through all the open areas as well. These bits are the bits I've cut off from the top and the bottom of the stamp because it's a bit longer than what I'm showing here. So when I trimmed them off, I decided they were too pretty not to use. So I've layered them up and added them on to break up this white area, sort of bridge across the gap between the two. Then showing you a very quick and simple card, because I do like big cards and I do like slightly more complicated cards, but it doesn't have to be. And this lace butterfly stamp is the perfect one to bring in with a background like this. That's just quick, simple and easy to do. I've literally stamped this, coloured it in with Alcar markers. I've taken a piece of polar white cardstock and I've embossed it with this stencil so that it matches. Now the bit I want you to try and zoom in on here is if you look into the lace, we have got the same styles running through in there. We've got this sort of hexagon style, so it matches perfectly with our octagons. It's sort of, I know they're slightly different obviously, but it gives you that same matching theme. It gives you that style of what's going to work perfectly to go between the two. It just adds to that lacy effect and builds that picture for you. So we're coordinating backgrounds with foregrounds, and that's something I absolutely love to do. And I think it just shows that commonality between the pattern that we're stamping with and the pattern we're embossing with. So there are your 3 samples for that one. Again, 3 very different styles, 3 different sizes, 3 different themes even, or styles of themes. And again, shows you how we could be using that one all year round. And then moving on to our last one, our very last one. I've saved my favourite to last. This is our Pinstripe Stencil. Now, as I mentioned, we can ink, we can use our texture paste, we can sort of go to town with this one. Now, when we ink this one, and I like to be honest with you, obviously, all of the others are very joined together. There's lots of joins and bits holding them. Doesn't matter which one we look at, they're all joined. When we come to our Pinstripe one, these lines are obviously not supported in any way in the middles. So when we blend with them with our brushes, one little tip I would give you is have a little piece of card that you hold on roughly on in some part of your line and blend and move it down with it just to keep your line straight. When you're working with texture paste and different mediums like misters, you don't have to worry about that. It's just because of the force of the bristles as we're sort of blending wants to try and move your lines about a little bit. I actually think that can look quite nice because then you end up with a more diffused line, which can work really nicely too. But it's just a little bit of a tip for you to make sure you're holding the lines in place as you blend over them if you want really crisp lines. Now, talking of crisp lines, let's bring this one in. So I've used an oxide ink for this. I think it's called Blue Print Sketch, something along them lines. Never can remember the oxide name, struggle enough with every name, let alone the whole array of the oxide collection. But I've used that one and I've blended over the top of it to make my lines in the background. I sort of reluctantly covered the middle part of them with our lovely panel because I actually really liked the pinstripes and felt that worked really nice. I would actually quite like to take this into a journal or a scrapbook page or onto a box maybe, because I just think that pinstripe looks really lovely. I've then used the same ink to stamp my lace butterfly and I've cut that out, layered it onto the top. I resisted the temptation of embossing this white card with the same line or pinstripe stencil, but you absolutely could do if you wanted to. So you've got that texture on here matching the sort of coloured lines behind it. But I know we all buy pinstripe paper and card, and actually between this stencil and our lovely pinstripe stamp and our great stripe line die, you don't really ever have to, because you can make them up now between stamping, inking through stencils, and die cutting and sticking down your own. And then of course, not only can we do them in one direction, we can take them, we can layer them. And if you've got the stamp, the die and the stencil, why not start mixing them between them and make up your own tartans and your own sort of ginghams and your own backgrounds by using the different lines? That would work really nicely. Then on to our next sample. So this time I've embossed it, and again, I never think you're going to see this very well, so I apologise, but it's in the background here on our Decadent Ivory cardstock. I have embossed this line. I've then used our Poinsettia Melody to stamp in the middle here using our Chameleon Green ink pad. I've used some of our inks to go over our poinsettia and our foliage, and I've added the Merry Christmas into the middle. Again, same stencil, very different themes. Then our last card I've got to share with you today is this one. So this time I've bought the Ruby Raid Gemstones Glitter Texture Paste. Again, I'm getting good at that. And put it through the stencil to make this lovely candy cane background. Now I've gone for going across, so horizontal lines, but actually this would look really nice as a diagonal line. And because it's quite a large stencil, there's no reason why you couldn't do that and have a slightly smaller panel. That would work really nice. On the top here, I've taken our Poinsettia Melody stamp again, stamped it, coloured it in with alcohol markers and layered that up just to sort of break up the background. But to be honest, this pinstripe was so sparkly and lovely, didn't really want to cover it or actually hide it away, but it's nice to show you how you can break that down in different ways if you would like to. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's video and that gave you a little bit of inspiration on what you could be creating with our incredible stencil bundle. Let me know in the comments, what one was your favourite? What one are you most excited to get your hands on? Is it our pinstripe, the octagon trellis, the large trellis, the directions, or the floating bubbles? To be honest with you, I know I've told you as we've gone through, I've got a couple of favourites, but I absolutely love having all of these in my stash. And I think after you've seen all that inspiration of what you could be creating with them, hopefully you're going to see how these are going to fit into your style, your creations, what you're working on right now, and more importantly, what you're going to be working on for the next however long, because that's what it's about, isn't it? It's having products that are going to come back time and time again. The real essentials that you're going to bring out to coordinate with whatever dies or stamps or products you buy next week, next month, next year, because that's the sign of a true essential. Now, if you would like to get your hands on these, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, this is an offer that is exclusive to our stockists for a limited time only. So it should be £29.95. It is currently on offer for £23.96, but this is limited. This offer ends on the 14th of September 2024. So if you've come to this video after that, I'm afraid that offer is over. If you're watching it at launch, make sure you get your hands on these as quick as you can. If you don't already have a favourite Jamie Rodgers Crafts stockist, then pop onto the website. It's www.jamierodgerscrafts.com, and on there you'll find a little stockist title, wording, menu option, I don't know, little box. Let's go with box. Give that a click and it will go through and it will show you all of our stockists. And then you might have to search a little bit to see which ones are taking part in this offer, but I'm sure you won't have to search too far. We have an incredible set of stockists that truly support us here at Jamie Rodgers Crafts, and I have a feeling they're going to be adding this bundle onto their websites and into their stores as soon as they possibly can to make sure it's available for you to get your hands on. If you have any questions, if you struggle to find the offer, if you have anything you would like to know about any of the cards I've shared with you today, if I've not told you something or I've missed something or I've gone over it too quickly, please don't hesitate to let me know in the comments. We are literally here to help, inspire, educate and be your backup. This is what crafting's all about, so please don't hesitate to ask. Now, of course, if you're watching this on our YouTube channel or one of our incredible stockists has shared this video with you, please make sure you subscribe to the Jamie Rodgers Crafts YouTube channel. It's a brand new channel. We only launched it this week and I would love to see you join our YouTube family. You may have already been on it, you may have already discovered we have quite a lot of little videos on there. We've got lots of little demos that go on, and we also have our introduction to videos. When a new launch comes out, there is a big video showing you lots of details about the launch and of course all of the samples that go with it as well. So if you haven't already, please do make sure you subscribe and tap the bell to get notified of all of our videos. It's a dedicated home for Jamie Rodgers Crafts videos, content and education, and we really want to work with you all and inspire you as much as we can on that platform. Now, of course, if you're not a YouTube user, do not fear. We will share all of these videos as they're released on the Jamie Rodgers Crafts Facebook page as well, and you'll also see hints and tips and bits appearing on our Instagram page on top of that. So you can find us in lots of many places, and we're just here to help in every way that we can. Thank you for watching today, and I look forward to seeing you all again very, very soon. Bye for now.